Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. We have got a great edition in store for you today. My name is Rudy Mireles here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Hidden surveillance cameras are popping up all along quiet border roads, tracking drivers without their knowledge. Later in this edition of the program, San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera and I are going to be speaking with CalMatters investigative reporter Wendy Fry about what she uncovered and why it matters for everyone living near the border. We're also going to speak to our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz in just a moment regarding some of the headlines that you're going to hear in just a moment. But as always, let's go ahead and get started with what's trending across the border, starting with after a year-long battle. The private prison company CoreCivic will be allowed to reopen a private prison and turn it into an immigration detention center in Leavenworth, Kansas. The city commission there approved a three-year special use permit this week. The city originally sued CoreCivic after it tried to reopen the 1,100-bed facility without city officials signing off on the deal. CoreCivic, which is one of the nation's largest private prison operators, said the center will generate $60 million annually once it is fully operational. The company used to run another facility in Leavenworth, but that ended after then President Joe Biden asked the Justice Department to curb the use of private prisons, something we also saw here in Willacy County in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. A $1.2 billion contract to run the largest immigration detention center in the nation has been canceled. We're talking about Camp East Montana, once again, as we've talked about several times on this program, which is located on Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. The detention center has been the focus of the death of at least 3 migrants, reports of diseases, and the inadequate care of the thousands of people being held there. Let's go over to our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, now, who has been covering this detention center since the Trump administration announced the contract was being awarded to a small Virginia business with zero experience running a corrections facility. Hey, Julian.
That's right, Rudy. The company is called Acquisition Logistics. And ever since the center opened back in August of last year, there have been numerous complaints on the part of the detainees or their advocates regarding the quality of the healthcare, the food, and any other number of services that are supposed to be offered to the detainees, the migrants there, waiting to be expelled from the U.S. Now, a lot of controversy surfaced just a couple of weeks ago when the Washington Post reported that the Trump administration was considering closing down the center, which consists of large tents up in the desert northeast of El Paso on Fort Bliss military territory. Since then, the Department of Homeland Security has clarified that whatever that was, it's not going to happen. The center not only will remain open and operating, but there's going to be some upgrades, some modernization that was not really specified. One thing we learned, and like you mentioned about the cancellation of the contract, they will be switching providers. I still don't have an inside clue as to who the new provider might be. What I can tell you is that in New Mexico, right across the Texas state line, in fact, not very far from Fort Bliss, there's 3 detention centers, migration detention centers, that the government of the state of New Mexico once closed. And they modified some state laws to ban local governments from engaging in contracts for the civil detention of migrants. Obviously, if there's a migrant who commits a state or a federal crime, an offense, and needs to be jailed, they will continue to be jailed. But as far as the migrants who are in an immigration administrative process, New Mexico doesn't want them there. The company, coincidentally, is CoreCivic. I don't know if CoreCivic has apply or would be applying to run the camp in East Montana, but the camp, like I said, is going to remain open. Now, really, I can tell you that yesterday, our local El Paso Congresswoman, Democrat Veronica Escobar, she had some words to say about this. First of all, she emphasized how the federal government kind of went back and forth on this issue. And now she says, well, if it's going to stay open and if they're going to switch provider, we're still going to be on top of it, herself, and some other advocacy organization. We have some sound from Congresswoman Escobar, Rudy, if we can play it, please.
There's been outpouring outbreaks of various communicable diseases that I think could have easily been prevented. And we had learned last week that there was serious consideration about the closure of Camp East, Montana. It really has been crisis after crisis after crisis inside that facility, but it looks like the administration pivoted and decided instead to get a new contractor. We are going to continue to keep a watch on that contractor.
So there you have it. So right now the facility holds between, well, close to 3,000 detainees last time I checked. Most of those detainees are in a process of removal. They are coming from all over the country. We've learned of people, migrants coming from Florida, migrants coming from Minnesota, all over the country, just waiting to see what happens to them. Now, the Congresswoman mentioned one of the health crises. The latest one is a measles outbreak that has forced a quarantine. Advocates and some attorneys are saying, hey, we can't get in there because they tell us that there's a quarantine because of the measles. So again, lots of things going on. The Congresswoman characterizes them as crisis, and the federal government is taking note, and they're changing providers. But I want to emphasize, as far as we know, the Camp East, Montana, the detention center, remains open, and the plans are for it to remain open.
Getting back into some of the deaths that we've seen there has also been reporting that there's been, I guess, what you would say, varying accounts of how some of the detainees died and under what circumstances they died. Can you fill folks who may be new to that aspect of Camp East, Montana, in on some of the fatalities that have happened there in just the, I mean, what is it now, 7-8 months of being open?
Right, and I can tell you that the 3 fatalities occurred during a very short period of time. I don't recall exactly, but it was less than 50 days. I think it was 3 fatalities in 45 days. We had a suicide. We had a very controversial case in which there's allegations that a staff member was seen on top of the migrant, and that particular fatality is being investigated locally as a homicide. And there was another one that was health related. And that goes back to what the Congresswoman was saying, the numerous concerns about timely medical care, about staff members listening to migrants who are complaining of various health ailments. So the Congresswoman refers to those as horror stories. And there are more. Maybe they did not result in a fatality, but certainly there's been complaints about lack of adequate, timely medical care. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, the food. There's complaints about food not being up to grade for consumption at the time that it is served.
Yeah, and going back to that food, that's something we've heard at several of these facilities that have popped up over the last year of the first year of the second Trump administration, is that not only is the food not at a high quality or consumable, but some of the things we've been hearing is that they're not giving people with medical conditions like diabetes, for example, the proper diet that they need to keep that diabetes in check.
Yeah, those have been the 2 principal concerns. But like the Congresswoman said yesterday, there are other concerns regarding just the attention that the guards are supposed to be paying to the detainees, and that could have prevented a lot of things, according to the Congresswoman.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting on this, Julian. We appreciate you joining us today. Our Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, joining us to give us the latest on the not so much the closure, but the cancellation of one contract running Camp East, Montana on Fort Bliss in El Paso and moving it to another contractor. We look forward to your future reporting on this because this is obviously a developing story. There's not a whole lot of information on who's going to be taking it over.
Absolutely. We'll keep you posted.
All right. Thank you so much, Julian. Well, stay with us because when we return, we're going to be speaking with a journalist, an investigative reporter from CalMatters about something that is impacting drivers regardless of citizenship status all along the southern border. We're going to be speaking with CalMatters investigative reporter Wendy Fry about what she uncovered and why it matters to all of us who live near the U.S.-Mexico border. So stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Artificial intelligence, new camera technology, it's really been a game changer for law enforcement agencies at all levels. For example, here in the Rio Grande Valley, just to the east of us, a couple smaller municipalities have gotten new technology that is supposed to help them read license plates to better track stolen vehicles maybe coming from Houston, making their way south of the border. And some of these technologies, new technologies that are popping up along South Texas roads are already bearing some fruit. We've had one local police agency say they caught a stolen truck, or a stolen vehicle rather, from Houston, Texas, just within a few days of putting up this new tech. Well, have you driven on a highway recently and noticed these white boxes on the side of the road? They've got solar panels on them. Do you have any idea what they are? Well, our next guest does. Our California correspondent Salvador Rivera joins us live from San Diego. And also joining us today is Wendy Fry. She's an investigative reporter with CalMatters, and she's the one who found out what those boxes are. Thanks so much for joining us today, Wendy.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Wendy, right off the bat, how did you come across this story? How did you uncover the facts? It's incredibly interesting, something we probably never knew of as we drove by these boxes and never gave them a second thought.
Right. You wouldn't notice them normally unless you are looking for them. And then once you do notice them, you see them everywhere. So it was actually a volunteer, a water drop volunteer, James Cordero with Al Otro Lado, who finally pulled over and stopped and took a look and examined them, and then figured out or noticed that it had a camera inside of it. But it looks like an abandoned trailer on the side of the road. So, and then also they have them in traffic cones and different construction barrels, things like that. And so we went out all over East County, all over far eastern San Diego County and into Imperial County, and just looking for a lot of them. They go all the way up to the Salton Sea too. So they go quite far north and on a lot of California state highways. So they're being permitted by the state of California's transportation agency, Caltrans, to put these cameras up.
And you uncovered that there's more than 40 of them. Is there a pattern to how they're spread out or their locations, perhaps?
Yeah, so we don't get a lot of transparency from Border Patrol or DHS about where they're located, but we do have the Electronic Frontier Foundation has a map up now of the exact locations of where all 44 of them that have been found. We just found a few more this past weekend. James found a few more out there in Jacumba. Basically, a lot of the cameras have cameras on them. So a lot of the, ALPR reader trailers, the white trailers that you're seeing right there, they also have cameras watching them. Presumably, I guess, probably to make sure they don't get destroyed or damaged or, vandalized in some way. But yeah, they are quite a few out there, and they're collecting huge amounts of data, I think, is the concern that privacy experts are raising, right? So authorities say that these systems are in place to do criminal investigations, to track cross-border smuggling activity, and as Rudy mentioned, to find stolen vehicles and help law enforcement with criminal investigations. But what they're doing is collecting data on every single person who drives in the border region. So if you live in the border region, if you cross the border back and forth and have kind of a cross-border lifestyle like many of us do, your driving patterns are being tracked and stored. And the controversy or the question, the debate that's going on about it is how long is this data being stored and who exactly has access to it?
Why is this a big concern? You already mentioned that to a certain degree, but what is Border Patrol, CBP, using the information for?
Right. So also another reason why we started looking into this and starting looking for the cameras is because we had started hearing from residents in the border region who said they were getting strange questions from Border Patrol. Like one man was pulled over by Border Patrol, and he's a Hispanic man, U.S. citizen. But obviously in this era, right, it was concerning for him to get pulled over by Border Patrol. And they asked him, hey, we're pulling you over because you spent less time in Calexico than it takes to drive there from San Diego. And he was like, is that a crime? Right? Like, what? Right? And then another woman who is in the article, a grandmother of an activist, it says that she was coming across the border. She's a longtime permanent resident, a green card holder, and CBP, as she was crossing the border, CBP asked her about how long she spends at different casinos, like the Golden State Casino, which that's one that's in the article. There's two cameras right at the entrance there of the Golden State Casino. So, it raises concerns, I guess, about the questions that they're asking just everyday citizens about their habits, their daily life, right?
Hmm. Certainly more Big Brother on top of us. There is a law in California, right, that prevents the use of cameras for or surveillance from cameras for law enforcement. Talk a little bit about that
Right.
and how the Border Patrol seems to be getting around this law.
Yeah, so the California state law, the sanctuary laws that California has enacted prevents local law enforcement from cooperating with federal immigration agencies on civil immigration enforcement. There's nothing in SB 54 that prevents them from cooperating, and they can and they do and they have cooperated with federal immigration agencies on criminal investigations. So anything that they're doing to track criminals, that's allowed. They are allowed to work with ICE and they are allowed to work with DHS. Also, there's a law about the local use of AI. The state of California has taken a lot of measures to really limit cities and counties that are using flock cameras, which are similar but not the exact same model that these ALPR readers are. But they have taken a lot of steps to limit how that data gets shared with federal immigration authorities. But that is sort of part of the controversy here is that we have Caltrans, which is a state agency, and they are permitting Border Patrol to install these readers on state highways in the state right of way, right? So this is something California has control over, and that they're allowing to do. And again, the Border Patrol says that this is for criminal investigations. It's to help stop crime.
Wendy, I wanted to ask you because you mentioned someone being stopped by Border Patrol and being asked about their business, and I think you said in Calexico. One of the things we've seen here in Texas is Border Patrol using similar technology to this, but getting local law enforcement to make those stops on their behalf. One person, for example, leaving South Texas, making his way back up towards San Antonio, was stopped for doing 50 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone. Have you seen any instances of Border Patrol or any other DHS unit asking local police on their behalf to make these stops?
We have not yet. We are looking for those records. We've requested those records, and we are continuing to look into it. That would go part into the laws that I mentioned. Local agencies are not allowed to like do the bidding of ICE or in California or do the bidding of DHS on civil immigration enforcement. So it would have to be a criminal investigation that they were saying, like, we have this drug trafficker or suspected drug human smuggler or something like that we're trying to track. So pull him over and ask him about this. What would be, I believe, we'd have to talk to attorneys, I guess, but what I believe would run afoul of SB 54, the California state sanctuary law, is if ICE was asking any local agencies, like the Imperial County sheriffs, for example, to pull people over and talk to them about things when there's not an ongoing criminal investigation going on. We have seen the Imperial County Water District, I believe it is, they have authorized cameras on their right-of-ways that they have. So that is one local agency, but we haven't heard about them questioning anybody yet.
Wendy, any news or any perhaps a speculation, and I hate to ask you to do that because I know you're an amazing journalist and you would not speculate on stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised if this program is going to grow and we're going to see a lot more of this license plate readers, even in other areas along the border. Do you think this is actually perhaps what they have in mind, Border Patrol has in mind?
Well, I think we've seen the program grow. What we can report is this started out as a way to stop people from avoiding paying toll fees, right? So the technology began as a way to find a driver who maybe didn't pay their toll, right? And then it has grown quite a bit to where we have cameras all over the place now. And then it's also using an AI predictive analysis. So the AI is flagging for Border Patrol things that the AI finds suspicious, right? Driving patterns that the AI, like, for example, spending less time in Calexico than it takes to drive there, or repeated trips to certain highways that are identified as high trafficking zones, right? And so it has grown quite a bit. I mean, it's something that DHS has been putting out reports about for 10 years. And so we've seen it grow, we've seen it continue to use, and we also don't see a whole lot of transparency. As I mentioned, there's not like California local agencies like local police, San Diego sheriffs, Imperial County, they're required to put quite a bit of information about how they're using the programs up on their websites by state law. But that law does not apply to the feds. And so we do not have information about what they plan to do with this, or if they plan to grow it, plan to put more cameras up. That organization that I mentioned, the privacy organization EFF, has asked the governor and Caltrans to start denying these permits, but Caltrans and the governor's office both have not responded that they plan to do that in any way. They say that they are in communication with Border Patrol about it, and it's for criminal investigations.
Before our time expires, I want to give you the opportunity to tell us where people can find your work and tell us a little bit about CalMatters and what it's about, and the journalism, the investigations that it uncovers, and why it's in business to help all of us.
Oh, thank you so much for the question. Right. So CalMatters, we are a state nonprofit organization, and we cover state policies and politics. And we've grown quite a bit. As you know, local news has kind of shrunk in recent years. A lot of us have found a home here at CalMatters, reporting on things that are very important to our communities. But we try to identify the intersection of state policy with how things are interacting in people's lives. And so that's kind of what our focus has been. And as you know, I've covered the border for a really long time. And so that's what we have been working on lately. And yeah, you can find us at calmatters.org.
I would imagine there's a follow-up. Knowing you're probably digging around already to see what else is out there.
Yeah, I've actually had people contact me about the story. You know, one of the persons that first brought the technology over from the UK I've talked to, and you know, they have some stories about how I've heard some stories about how it's being used. The technology has been used in the past. One example I heard was, you know, I know we have all heard about Fast and Furious, and so they went around a parking lot and got all the license plates in the parking lot of a gun show, and then put a camera at the border to see if anybody went to the gun show and then went to Mexico, which that's probably a pretty good use of that technology, right?
We've been speaking with Wendy Fry, investigative reporter at CalMatters. Unfortunately, we are out of time today, but we appreciate you joining us so much, Wendy.
Thank you.
And thank you, Salvador, as always, our San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. We've all heard how deadly fentanyl can be. Well, imagine a synthetic narcotic 10 times stronger than that. And that's how many are describing something called cyclorphene. It is the newest opioid tied to dozens of recent overdoses in many parts of the country. Like fentanyl, cyclorphene is being mixed in with other street drugs, but it is not detectable through fentanyl test strips, making it even more dangerous. Although Narcan is still believed to be effective at treating an overdose caused by cyclorphene. The drug has been linked to 19 overdose deaths in Tennessee. It has also been detected in New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Louisiana, Texas, Washington, Nevada, and California. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers in Indianapolis recently seized 6 shipments containing 450 units of Botox and other filler injectables. The shipments originated in South Korea, Vietnam, and the Philippines, and were headed to homes in New York, Maryland, Tennessee, Illinois, and Kentucky. None of the shipments had necessary licenses, permits, authorizations, or prescriptions. Before we go, we wanted to remind you that you can always stay informed on the topics shaping the U.S.-Mexico border, from immigration to trade, security to culture. Border Report Live dives deep into the issues impacting life all along the U.S.-Mexico border. And you can join us now for our podcast edition for expert interviews, on-the-ground reporting, and the latest developments that you won't hear anywhere else. You can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio app, Spotify, and you can get both the audio and visual versions of the program on YouTube. And before we go, we also wanted to remind you to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. It's a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. Nextstar's Director of Political Content, Chris Berg, and Director of Emerson College Polling, Spencer Kimball, break down who's up and who's and who's down in the world of politics based on data. Now, this week's episode is going to be big. It's a two-parter, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Lots of new polling that you're not going to want to miss. So make sure to check out Political Power Ranker at abc27.com, or you can check your local Nexstar station's website. Got a lot going on next week, starting with the beginning of formal talks between the Mexico and United States on the new renegotiation of the USMCA trade agreement. So we're looking forward to that. Sandra Sanchez will have some new reporting on that oil rig as well, and we're going to hear from what environmental experts have to say about it. As far as today's edition, that's going to do it for us. For Julian Resendiz in El Paso, Salvador Rivera in San Diego, I'm Rudy Mireles in Harlingen. We'll see you next time.